the schools. And some of you may have got a chance to go to our celebration football game last Friday night. It was just a lot of fun. The part that made me happy was to see how proud the kids were. I was talking to a senior, and she said, man, it was just, you know how seniors can get, sometimes they're a little self-focused as teenagers. But what this person said was, we were the ones that changed it. And I was just like, that's so cool. You know, on the backside, you know, it's the community that changed it. It's the lifting, it's this and that. But to see the kids proud that there's excellence in their life and that they're part of excellence, to me, that's what really is important. And that's kind of that indicator, yeah, we're seeing success. When the kids are proud of working hard and what they've got from that. And I will echo what Dave said, this has been a community thing without a doubt. I've been in other times when people have tried to, you know, go from good to great, and without a community effort, it does not work, without a doubt on that piece. We have other things. I mean, we've gotten our alternative high school, HEA, that's been turned around. We have a new principal there as well. And I mean, there's thing after thing after thing we could sit and talk about. One of the hard parts for me is, if you start celebrating and say we're doing great, is then there's some other person who goes, wait a minute, does that mean I wasn't doing great? And I want to make sure we say that's not the case at all, but we're very happy with the growth we've seen because it's been steady, it's been sustained, and now we're really seeing that level of excellence. So currently what it is, the state, our newest success, the state has called us this District of Distinction, so they give accreditation ratings to every district, all 182 districts in the state. And so there's only 13 other districts that have ever had this rating back to back. So it puts us, there's only 27 districts who have ever gotten that rating. So we're in a very, very small group of districts that have been able to find this kind of success. So that's kind of where we are right now. We've seen the new buildings, we've seen those things. I've had a lot of people say, how have we done it? And I think there's two main things we've done. One is positivity. It comes from a community that's supporting, and then also working really hard to make sure everyone's positive. When we offer jobs now, we call in, and that's one of the key questions when we're offering jobs as administrators, is we talk about positivity. Can you be positive? When I was doing the new teacher orientation this year, we talked a ton about that, and I love when Daryl came in. He was in a rush, and he just said, listen, if you can't be positive, go get a new job. And that's kind of just the boom right there. You have to be positive, because I can take average competency and positivity, we can do amazing things, versus I can have incredible competency and negativity, and it's not going to go anywhere. So we're seeing it in the kids, we're seeing it in the staff, because it allows us to start to work towards solutions and not just point out the problems. And that's the key piece. And then I think the other thing it's allowed us is you start to celebrate success. Because it's not like Salida Schools is perfect. It's not like there's not work to be done or there's things to grow in. But there's a lot of great things happening. So how do we celebrate those things and communicate those to the families and to the kids, to the staff? I think that makes a huge difference to build that culture of positivity that allows you to keep going forward, whatever that next difficult thing is you got to lean into. And the other thing we've also done is we're really pushing hard to make sure all the teachers teach to specific kids. Johnny has a name, Susie has a name, and there's not one generic kid, and you can't do a generic answer or a generic program. And so that's really what the instructional methods we're trying to choose is, what does this kid need, and how do we get that to that kid? Whether it's a content issue or whether it's a method, there's no one answer for this generic kid, because that kid doesn't exist. I think that's been another big, huge shift in trying to make that a focus of how we do things. And then there's just this unique focus, because I've been an administrator for a while, and sometimes when I interrupt the teacher's classes just because I got to go talk to them, there's some detail about a system or something like that. I don't do that with our teachers now. They scare me. Because if I interrupt their time when they're teaching, it's not okay. And I love it. I'm like, oh no, hey. They are focused with what they're doing, and that I think is another key aspect for why we're seeing the kind of success we're seeing right now. It's positive things and that focus, key pieces. And so obviously I can answer more questions, but that's kind of where we sit, in a place of, wow, I am proud, very, very proud, and it's a great place to be. The thing I mentioned the other night at the football game is I said, I feel like it's more of a stance of gratitude, though, with arms open to say, wow, I'm proud, but I'm open for the next thing, because we do know what got us here isn't going to keep us here, isn't going to be the next thing we need to do. So some of the stuff we're trying to deal with, because we know that the world's changing quicker. We know that any kid who starts in our schools, The job that we could start training them for will not exist by the time they graduate and go into it. So we assume every kid who leaves our schools is going into a job that we didn't know about. That's the rate of change these kids have to be ready for. We can't say, oh, we're going to make you ready for this job. Sometimes there's industries, there's those things. The rate of change is just astronomical. You know, even when I went to school, I'm a younger man, you could say, here's a computer, teach those computer skills, and those are still valid when I hit the workforce. We assume any computer skill we teach is going to be outdated by the time they hit the workforce. And so that makes a unique set of challenges. On the flip side, I always do smile when people would get upset about Common Core or whatever this or that is, because guess what? I do know in 10 years we're going to teach reading, and we're going to start with the letter A, and we're going to go to B, and we're going to teach math, and we're going to start 1 + 1 = 2. We're going to try and find the variable of X. There are some things that I smile about. A lot of what we do isn't going to change in the next 10 years. Reading, writing, math, arithmetic. Can you smile and communicate? Can you do those basic things? That is still going to be the heart and soul of what we're about. It'll be that other edge stuff that'll be the hard piece. And so when I look about 5 years out, one of the things we're trying to do is to make sure we have capacity in our kids. They're going to have to be flexible and adaptable because we don't know the world they're doing. So one of the things, for example, in the middle school, we started a project-based class for every single kid. And what that is it's not a class where every kid gets an A and we worry about what the hard facts are. It's a class in some ways where the kids can fail, where the kids can struggle, where we can start to work on independence. We can start to work on those things where it's not a math class, so if they don't do well on it, it's a place to really, where can we build capacity in these kids so when we get into high school we can work on some other stuff we have a dream of. Daryl spent a lot of energy, and one of the things we're starting to work on is how do we do more apprenticeships, exposure type programs. We worked really hard last year with CMC and Western State to start to design that. So we're leaning into that with the Economic Development Corporation. We're trying to work with them. We're trying to bring partners to the table. I know that you guys as well have some interest in that. And so we're looking to you guys for help. Because one of the things we also want to make sure is, how do we help these kids go find a job? It used to be our career as a K-12 person was how do we get them to college, and college would help them find a job. The part we're running into right now is, one, just because you have a 4-year bachelor's degree doesn't mean you're going to have a job. You can expect $30,000 to $40,000 for half of your degrees. How many of us would look at a 22-year-old and say it's a good idea for you to get $120,000 of debt? Because that's the average, that's the cost that they have to consider in terms of college right now. So it used to be college was a great investment, and now it's becoming this, well, we need to talk about that investment. What is that piece? And there are a lot of jobs where kids can not go to college, you can go straight into the workforce and be making that money that college was supposed to help get you ready for, so you can go. And it's not that money makes dreams, but without any money, things can get desperate when you're in poverty. So there's questions like that we're asking. That apprenticeship program is a chance for us to start to build capacity in our system. So that's the key thing for me right now when I look at the kids, is how do we make sure they have enough capacity to handle the world they're going into, as well as the basics of reading, writing, math, and those kind of things. When you go out past 5 or 10 years, for me, personally, I start to get philosophical, and that's where Dave and I like to sit around and hang out and talk, but I start to look more about character issues. Those are the things when I look at our nation. Once you're out 5 or 10 years, you're just talking about what's the purpose of public education, preparing a workforce and citizens. And I worry about our kids. I do. I worry about the world we created. And sometimes I joke with people when we look at like the teenage and the later adolescent ages, I don't know that you could put all the smartest people in the world and make a more dangerous environment for teenagers than what we've created. Complete capacity, affluence to reach any option, and we've muddied the waters, and there's no more black and white, and it's gray. And so we have empowered them greatly and taken away clarity of what right and wrong is and how you go through those things. And those muddy waters scare me for our kids. So there's things of how do we start to build character into kids? Not that that's the school's job, but how do we do those kind of things? And there's even character qualities that I worry about, things like hope. I think there's some character qualities, bravery and courage. Those are the kind of things when I look at our younger kids that are in the elementary school, those things are going to be the things I know. I don't know what the world's going to be to go. I know it's different. I know it's going to be muddier than it is today. So I know that one of the things they are going to need is some internal qualities. And so at the middle school, not just the elementary school, we also started trying to deal with more some of the whole child stuff. Things about some of those character qualities, and how do we bring that in and make sure kids are resilient. So we're trying to add that piece. Because to be honest with you, like my job is really a lot of the state testing and compliance and making sure we're doing that, and that's what brings us awards, and that's amazing. Because it's a minimum indicator that our kids can read and write and do math and do school well. We've got those pieces. But if you're going to ask David as a person, not in my director of academic affairs hat, I'm more interested on the indicators that really make people successful. Because I'm sure half of you couldn't even tell me what your ACT score was. And I don't think that your ACT score is going to lead you to success of whatever your dreams are. And so that is another big thing we're trying to ask ourselves. Great, we're kicking just kicking the tail off that test. Okay, that's not necessarily what success is. It's part of how the state defines success and compares us to other places. But there's far more to success, and that's where we're leaning into as a school board. That's where we're trying to make sure our programs have those capacity issues, so that we can nurture those things in our kids. Daryl and I, one of our visions this year is to find time to start to work on success plans. Just to sit down, I've already sat down with the kids at lunch and start to ask them, what's your dream? How do you get dreams? So my favorite was I sit with the kindergartners, what's your dreams? Create monkeys. Great! How do you create monkeys? I don't know, you ask your mom. Okay! You know, but there's some beautiful things when you start to talk to kids and say, because that's how we want to say, that's the indicator that we're being successful. That every year, whatever age they're at, we start to teach them to dream. Because I think people without dreams start to become shallow and they don't live the lives that we hope they'll live. So we're trying to, how do we build their dream capacity? How do you teach a person to break up a dream in a way that you can chunk it and start to tackle it? That's a much bigger issue, but that's what the work we're trying to lean into right now, is how do we make sure our kids can dream and they can start to do those things. And that's why short term we are asking for more apprenticeships and those pieces, because we think that's a key element to starting to get to kids to think, oh, what else is there? What else can I go? We're working in foreign exchange programs. Can we get them out of this small little town, this small community, and make sure they realize what else is there? I was at Boston and University and Harvard this summer working with their director of admissions, trying to say, how do we make sure our kids can go to those places? Because sometimes we worry about the small town effect in this isolated valley. Make sure kids realize what the world is they're competing against. Those are all things of how do we increase our capacity to teach kids to dream and support those pieces. So that's kind of where the district's at. We're very excited where we're going. A lot of hard work ahead of us, and there's still a lot of gaps that we're doing, but things are in a good place, from facilities to academics, and the culture is in a good place, which I think is at the heart of what really we want to see. So, anybody have questions for me? Is it a Q&A, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. If you have questions, I'll have Daryl or Dave answer them.
Yes. This individual education plan, they didn't have that when I was in school.